something that we didn't know, or at least I didn't until we started working with our container expert, is that all containers, at least in our country, there's typically a 7-year lifespan until it's required that the container is replaced. So these things are constantly being recycled all the time. So that's another thing where I was talking about costly mistakes. That's sometimes a costly mistake that I will see like entry level container builders make, or people that try to do it themselves, is they will go and find the cheapest containers they can because they think that the pricing is, equal. It's like, oh, well, this supplier had it way too expensive. Like this one's way cheaper. So, I'm just going to get this one because they're the same, and they're not. So the more used a container is, the cheaper it's going to be, but also the I would say unsafe because what you experience is that wear and tear when it stays in that condition and it's just going across port after port. You really start to lose like the strength of the container. That's why they have to be recycled, because after 7 years, like there's a greater likelihood of it to really get kind of bent out of shape, and then you don't have flat levels to anything. So that's another way it saves cost and time, is when you use a container that we try to go for gently used, which is right around 2 or 3 years, you still get a huge discount and savings, and they're like new. They're not super old,
Right.
but we'll recommend that. And when you do that, you have perfect lines every time. So sometimes when you get lumber and you get wood and you're doing your framing, they're warped, they're bent, they're not all perfect. But for the most part, with containers, the actual shell and like the outline of them tends to be pretty perfect because it's metal. And for them to effectively be able to go from port to port, they have to stay in that original shape. So whenever they're damaged, they typically will pull it out of circulation. So anyways, not to just go on a massive rant, but there's a lot more to the industry that people don't really think about.
Yeah. I mean, the part about using it, we'll call it, like you say, gently used, okay, is important, because if some people, in my experience, people that are interested in container homes, they're not interested in doing a container home and then basically covering the outside and doing like stucco or anything like that. They may want to keep part of the look of the container,
Yeah.
mostly outside, but some people on the inside, where they want to have that more industrial look, they'll keep the container look from the inside, and being able to do it when creating the outside in the design. You could do maybe a wainscot of stone on the outside just to accent it, and then you could build out the property like with an adjoining deck or something else, which actually, and if you have a like a large enough, like you put a big Arcadia door or something in the side of the container, you could bring the outside in and the inside out, which I know
Mhm.
in a lot of traditional homes we've put in these panoramic doors that are like 12 feet long.
Yeah.
You can basically expand what you start with, and it all depends on the design and what you're actually looking for and what you want to do. But building up and doing that, I love the fact that you could take those containers, and if you really want to get into the exterior architectural look of a container home or a container community that is more than one story, you could do so many different things with 40-foot containers, combining them, decking them, maybe combine a 40 with a 20. I've seen
Yeah.
square stacks of 40s, and on top there's a 20, and on the third floor, technically, when you're looking at it, the rest of that part that is 20 feet is an elevated deck, so you can look and see if you have a surrounding great view. You have your own personal deck up there. So there's just so many different things that you could do, and making it affordable by doing what you're doing, while you're creating them and manufacturing them in a controlled environment, so that this way, when they go out into the field, the time involved that the homeowner is waiting for them and seeing what is going on with their property is a whole lot less, time involved, and it's more cost efficient, like you said.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great point, and you're totally spot on. So the possibilities are absolutely endless. My favorite designs are the ones that are very modern looking, and I'm a huge fan of like farmhouse, the white with the black piping, like that. That's my favorite. So a lot of the women, if we're working with buyers that are like, hey, we want to build our own home, and we would love for it to be unique, for it to be energy efficient. We want it to be environmentally friendly, like all of those things. A lot of times buyers will want to create their own home out of this because of the unique factor and because they can really save money like long term. So not even just in the build itself, but when they are more energy efficient, which truly, if they're built correctly, they are. You can get credits, you can get refunds, all these things. So traditional consumers tend to like it for those reasons. But I've noticed 90% of the men that we've received inquiries from, whether they be developers or investors, they love the look that you are describing because, again, like men are very visual and they're very much set on the original concept of container homes are small and we want it to be doomsday prepping ability. So, like, I've literally had people reach out saying, can you make a single container? So, we came out with a line of singles because a lot of people are looking at containers as a way to add space to their existing property.
Exactly.
So whether you want rental income, you want your own office space, you want an in-law suite, like it is so easy now to literally get online and special order and request one of these. But I just want to make a very clear distinction because there's a lot of possibilities here, but people get very, very confused. What you just described is the most commonly I would say, believed principle when it comes to container homes. People assume that they are prefabricated, prefab, or pre-manufactured, which they totally can be. And what I just described when we launched a single line, having one unit that people can purchase and have delivered to their home, we start ours at 99K, and those would have to be made off-site and then delivered. So you're right. But the true developments that we pitch, that we work with investors and builders on, those are ones that we will build on site because in order to have these insured and get mortgages from banks, like that was the biggest hurdle that I had to solve. And it took me a full 9 months of just calling bank after bank after bank. And then we have a partnership now exclusively that they've agreed they will write a mortgage on any home we build anywhere in the country. But a lot of banks are very skittish and scared of this concept because of what we already talked about. They think container homes are prefabricated small trailers.
Right.
And everyone knows like you can't get a mortgage on a trailer. And that's what they think of. They think that you're just going to airdrop a piece of crap that's, you bought for 3 grand and you want a mortgage for 180,000. So that's not what it is at all. And that's why for building someone's home, in order for us to get a mortgage on it, get it insured for them, all those things, we will just have the containers delivered to the site. And we say that we're not building a container home, we're building with container elements. We're using the steel from the container, and that makes it a traditional permanent steel structure. So it turns it into regular construction versus prefab construction. So that was a very small but very, very big thing that we had to learn.
Yeah, it's all about verbiage, and I know what you're talking about, the banks and stuff, because they are looking at it and they want to lend money, and mortgage companies are looking at it and say, well, I don't have any homes like say in that area that you can compare it to so they can get
Yeah.
comparable numbers. So it's just well, it was in the past, it was just too easy to say no. So that's what they did. But you've solved that problem, which is so important, that when people, because I had people call me and like, well, I can't get any, mortgages, and I've searched and searched, and I found a gentleman who actually does that in Florida, who actually, their company actually writes mortgages for container homes. So again, if you're committed, like I know you are, to finding solutions to these problems because you see the vision, that's so important. But we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, I want to talk to Chloe a little bit about her Rose project and some of the housing solutions for domestic violence survivors. So I want everybody to hang tight. You are listening to Boxcar Universe.
Okay.
All right, we're clear. So that was I thought that was really good. What'd you think, Chloe?
Yeah, no, great questions and great like input too. I thought it was good. If I am going on too long about any topic, please cut me off and redirect. But yeah, if you're good with me just kind of sharing anything that I feel like might be helpful, then perfect.
No, I think that's fine. I mean, you're with those things you touch based on. I get questions all the time, especially like I was going to say, and I'll probably say when we go through some of the other stuff. I get people asking me all the time. It says, "Well, how could you live in a container in Arizona when it's so damn hot?" Well,
Mhm.
did you ever hear of insulation? You know,
Exactly.
like I
All
mean,
these are insulated.
yeah, I mean, come on, these things are insulated. It's not like you go into they think it might be a pod container. They dropped at your house with your stuff inside. No, it's a container. I mean, I've gone through and framed out myself a complete interior of a 20-footer that they wanted to use just for a model, and it's a lot that goes in, just like a traditional house.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
anyway, so Gabe stepped out for a minute. So when he comes back, um, he'll do the intro music. We'll go back and get started on this. But yeah, we can go through the Rose project, and then it kind of blended it in. So we'll do some of the Rose project, and then I'll bring in the just so we can make sure we get everything in. I'll bring in the vision I have for homeless veteran communities.
Yeah. Oh, and that was the reason, by the way, that I just laid it out in that order because I wanted to be able to end on your mission or have that be like the biggest talking point, if that makes sense.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that
Yeah.
way.
And then when we do the third segment, we get into the nonprofit business model and funding solutions, and and I combined it with the future of nonprofit housing, and then I left the complete last segment for how the listeners can get involved. So this way we don't, we want to make sure we get that all in.
Oh yeah, but I'm glad you brought that up because I don't know when you plan on having this episode go live, but yeah, having people get involved right now, I have a handful of different websites that are all under construction, not BoxedLuxe. I mean that they can always just go there and like submit an inquiry if they want. So I mean maybe that's easiest to say that they can just go to boxedluxehomes.com and just go to, I have like an investor tab where they can just submit an inquiry if they want to learn about how they can build and stuff. So maybe that's probably the easiest. Sorry to make that complicated. I didn't prepare a special link is all.
Oh, that's okay. Because probably what we'll do is we'll get the audio out like over the weekend, and then the video stuff will come back, and we'll do some editing on it and make sure that it will get out some of this stuff in between. And then this way we'll get that out probably, like in the next week or two.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay. So yeah, the website would just be great then. And it's just BoxedLuxeHomes, plural.com. And the Luxe is Luxe. I mean, I can make sure to like email it to you, but yeah, I know typically with podcasts, it'll just be like in the writing. So,
Oh, yeah,
um,
I got that. All right. Let's hit it, Gabe. All right, we are back, and you're listening to Boxcar Universe, and I am here with Chloe Millard from BoxedLuxe Homes, and we are talking about the different uses of containers and the multi-container uses for residential homes and community development. And one of the projects I want to talk to Chloe about is her Rose Project and the housing solutions for domestic violence survivors. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this is a passionate project that is very near and dear to my heart. So over the last few years, my eyes have really been open to a pretty big crisis that I've seen more often than not is silent. And it's something that like right now, for example, on average, women will experience domestic violence. Like 1 out of every 3 women will go through it at least once in their lives. And I mean, this can look like anywhere from financial abuse to emotional abuse to physical abuse. And when it involves kids, it gets really nasty. So something that we've seen and we've noticed is, especially in affluent communities, for example, our builds are luxury. We market affordable luxury. So we specialize in affluent marketing. I've seen these trends be honestly, it scared me as a woman because people think that when you are in an affluent community or you think about the top 1% of people, they kind of look at the whole family and, it's seen as like, oh, it must be nice, right? Like you have everything, your life must be perfect. But that tends to be where women get abused the most because it's a lot of, kind of white collar executives or just men with power that women end up being abused in their marriage and they have nowhere to go. And especially with young children, it's hard to go to a homeless shelter when you're a woman in that position because you have all the means financially, but they're not yours. And so I have just heard story after story after story that women that are trapped in that situation, they can't leave because they really have nowhere to go. They can't tell anyone because they're often very connected in a community. So it just becomes this very toxic and sometimes deadly situation for a lot of women. So we came up with the concept, the Rose Project, after kind of working closely with so many women and just seeing like outpouring need from churches and from women's shelters and groups. And the whole concept is the Rose Project essentially is a safe haven for women and children of domestic violence. And the idea is that each container can house an entire family. And because these can be fully sustainable, they are able to go off the grid, which means that we would work with local churches. And anytime a woman came in needing help or services, they could simply give her like a card with the location on it, or an assistant they work with. And we have the actual I don't want to call it like a bunker, but it's really like it's a secured location that is comprised of 5 containers. So it's in the shape of a cross, and the Rose Project is part of our logo, but each container that houses a family will face on the outside, forming the cross, and they're all joined in the middle by a communal container. And the idea behind that is when you are going through this situation, it's very scary. You're very alone. And especially if you're a mother, you really need to feel like you have a community and you have someone there to watch your kids or play with your kids while you can focus and make an escape plan to get out. And so building these with containers, I created the entire nonprofit focus to where everybody wins because I know what investors are looking for when they want to put their money somewhere. I know what huge businesses are looking for and they want to donate to a nonprofit and charity. So we have it structured to where all of these containers can be completely paid for and sustained. And it all makes companies money because when a woman comes into this, she's not looking for a place to stay long term. Typically, these women, they have access to means and capital, but they need to litigate for it. It's, with their husband, and they need time just to safely get attorneys and things situated. So we would almost use these safe havens as the launch pad to connect these women to all of these vital services in that local community. So think of the advertising and marketing for those businesses, but it's also social good. Like everything they put into the project, for example, if a business was going to sponsor a container container for $1,000 a month. They could literally pay for everything multiple women, children, families need going through that to power the electric, to which we would use solar panels, but still paying the cost to power and maintain the units and just collecting donations for food and all of that. You're able to connect these women with lawyers, the phone companies, banks, like all these things that they need to start a new life. And that is so valuable for companies because the customer loyalty they get from meeting a woman or a new customer at that part in her life cycle, she's going to be with them forever. So it really is like this. Everyone wins in this concept, but the whole idea is that you're giving a woman and her children, whether it's a night or a week, like literally a safe haven to stay in and using it out of single containers. You can build them fast, you can build them cheap and easy. And at the same time, they still will look beautiful because that's the thing. Like, you don't have to make it look dark and depressing and make it look like a container. But when it's quote unquote off the grid, that's a way that a woman can get there without being tracked because it doesn't need to plug into city sewer or power or anything. You can completely have everything remote. So yeah, I know that was a very, very long intro, but it's something I'm super passionate about. And there's a lot of moving pieces and parts, but you can put it anywhere in the country. And our mission would be to target those affluent areas because it's a short-term solution for women, but it's also, like I said, a huge way for them to get connected with all the local business that they need to start over. So yeah, and it can be used for anything. We've consulted on tons of nonprofit work because containers can literally do anything for a lot of these charities.
You know, the analogy of what your mission is with the Rose Project, and one that I am sensitive to, is creating container homes for homeless veterans. And when you think about the women that seek out help, it's similar to the veterans that come to, back home, and they are seeking help. They need to be reintegrated into society because they've led that military life for so long. And a lot of times, if these veterans come back, if they don't have family to go back to, or if they don't have maybe the means to be able to go and buy a home or live on their own, they need government assistance to be able to do this. The problem is, until late, there are some great organizations out there that help homeless veterans in building traditional homes, like the Gary Sinise Foundation. Tunnel to Towers does it. Those organizations, they are instrumental in helping them back. But building container home communities, much like the gentleman who I had on my show about a year and a half ago in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where he can go back out and rally investors and rally the community to be able to go out and find locations and get donations and people that want to sponsor this whole project so that he can actually build container homes for homecoming for all these homeless veterans. Because if they didn't have them there, they would be homeless.
Yeah.
A lot of, when I go see on the street in Phoenix, you see a lot of people out there. It's really hard to see people out there on street corners with cardboard signs wanting to, please, give me help, give me anything, or I have kids or I have pets, and you see pets on the side with these people too. I mean, that really hits home for me because I'm a big pet lover. But they want to be able to go back, and if you see them and say a homeless vet, I mean, that really hurts. I mean, why someone who actually goes and fights for our country and puts their life on the line every day for the time that they were in the service, to be able to come back into the community and reintegrate, should not be homeless. There's just no way. They've given their life, that portion of their life, to serve their country. Well, the country should do something for them. And these organizations, thank God that they're out there, but we always want to be able to do more. And I want to be able to do and rally people and investors around the country there, where we could go back and build not just single home communities, but when I say a community, I'm talking about multi types of container homes, singles, two or three put together, because sometimes they have, maybe they do want to put a couple of people from that came back that are in a family and they all want to live together, to be able to do that and have that support mechanism for for these military people that have come back into our country. So I think and again, talking about the recovery for domestic violence survivors, okay, a lot of military people that come back, they need recovery because they've gone through such traumatic things, being fired upon. You hear a noise, you turn around, you jump because you don't know if that was somebody firing on you. I mean, you get a lot of people come back with PTSD.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I'm so glad you said that because I feel like people do not understand the weight of what it actually is like to live with PTSD. It's so debilitating and it's so unpredictable. Like it comes on your body and hits you so hard. And depending on like what you suffer from and what your symptoms are, it can make it almost impossible to function. And I couldn't agree more. These are men and women that selflessly and bravely served our country. And that's why with my marketing agency, the most work I've done for nonprofit and charities, it's women and children and veterans. I have such a heart for our veterans. And that's why I just love your mission so much. And I want to support you in every way that I can because I would love to build a community for veterans in every major city. I know you said that's your goal and you want to have it all throughout the country. And there's so many ways that it can be funded, that it can be like broadcast and done where every veteran coming back, they can have that as an option. Like, hey, if you need somewhere to live, we have relationships with these developments, these communities. Like, I really feel the best thing for veterans is not only giving them those resources, but just having a direct plan. Because the last thing I would want to think about when I'm coming back from a tour or from serving and all you know how to do is serve, now you have to suddenly learn how to think like a civilian again or start over. You're literally starting your life over.
Yeah.
And I get goosebumps when I think about it because not only do you have PTSD and nightmares and just like you've seen and witnessed the unthinkable and you put your body in fight or flight mode for God knows how long, for years. Some people are in it for like their careers. And so your body is operating at this not normal level because you're protecting your country. And so, yeah, I fully agree that there is not enough being done. And I live in Dallas, Texas. So down here in Texas, we have some of the largest veteran populations, and there are so many laws that I feel so sad for our veterans because, I mean, you talk about PTSD and ailments, injuries, things that they suffer from outside of housing, and not to go on a tangent, but the fact that we don't have things legal here that will help them with that, like medicinal marijuana, just things like this. And again, not to be political, but the fact that our veterans, I feel, should be given the best access and the first kind of resource that they can have, and they're often not. And so for me, I'm just a huge passionate believer in opening up more programs for veterans, definitely more housing for veterans. And again, same with the Rose Project, like building communities for veterans. I feel that you can absolutely do that and have an initiative to get one in every major city in the country if we can make it make sense for everyone. And so that's the thing, like I don't think you'll ever find someone that will disagree that our veterans are not our heroes and we shouldn't be doing what we can to help them. And if you do find that person, let's airlift them out of here. I can't stand people like that. Get them out. But with that being said, and it's the same with my initiative too, like all nonprofit, you'll find people that have a heart for it like you. But when you work with investors or developers, like they have a million of those projects that people are saying, do this for me. We want this for free. And the way to break out from all the noise It's not to get selfish and greedy and go, oh, no one wants to build these because they're not getting filthy rich. That's not it at all. It's like they're good people too that would love to build a development like that, but they also need to feed their kids. So they're kind of like, if you can make it make sense for me, I'll lower my cost, or I'll throw in something extra, or I'll shorten the time. Like there's a lot of things that people will be willing to do if it also makes sense for them. So for a project like this, you mentioned some nonprofits that already build homes for veterans that are supporting them. And I feel like if those foundations were to get a hold of what you want to do and you had a plan, which I know you have, I'm just saying, like, when you can actually partner with them and say, look, like, this is how we're going to build these with containers, we'll save money on it. But when we get a veteran in here, when you connect them with other things, other businesses, like they're going to need a cell phone. Again, they're going to need a bank account. They're going to need all of these services that it's not, putting them in a bad spot to sign up for it because they need it. They just came back to civilian life. But for the businesses that are going to earn their business, that becomes super lucrative for them. That becomes a huge advantage where they can donate to like providing housing for veterans. But in doing so, they're getting lifetime marketing for their products and services. They know that every veteran that goes into that housing project is going to sign up for their cell phone service or for their banking. And even like getting a mortgage, we have, intro rates for veterans to where you can get a mortgage for your home with no money down. You can get discounts on building materials. You have all of these like benefits that you can take advantage of, but it's so complicated to like for anyone, for someone who didn't go into war and stayed home and studied this every day for months and years, even, it's still complicated. So partnering with all of those businesses that want to get those veterans as customers and then giving the veterans like a very laid out plan of, we have a place for you to live, we have a place for you to get everything that you need. Like think about, you could partner with Best Buy even and be like, we know you need new appliances, we know you need all this new stuff, and we already went out and pre-purchased it for you and you get a discount. So I could literally, talk about funding ideas all day long. But I really love your mission, and I think that there's a million ways you could do it.
You're listening to Boxcar Universe, and we are here with Chloe Millard today from BoxedLuxe Homes. And we are trying, as we always like to do, we talked about this the other day, Chloe, we're out here doing something that we love, we have a passion about, and wanting to make a difference. And I think that's so important because a lot of times people just fall into ruts and well, it's the way it is, and or I heard this, or well, if you don't like it, do something about it to change it. Yes, you may be a lone, this lone person out there, but you want to know something? If you believe in something long enough, like you said, you had a passion as a serial entrepreneur. I got to start. Do you mind if I use that? Can I?
Oh, please. I don't own it. Yeah. If you
I
have two
love
or more businesses in your life, you're a serial entrepreneur.
I love that. And there's a story about, when you see something that saying that you like about somebody, okay, that somebody said, okay, so and I would turn around to somebody later today and I say, I heard, I had Chloe Millard on my podcast today, and she brought up a very good term. She said that she's a serial entrepreneur. And then maybe tomorrow I'll go back out and somebody will say something, and that'll snap into my brain, and I can turn around. Now, this is the second time. I'll say, yeah, I know this. I heard this saying the other day that this person is a serial entrepreneur. But now the third rolls up and somebody says it, and I could claim it. It's mine.
Yeah, I was gonna say you should, because you're definitely a serial entrepreneur. I thought you'd like that.
I love that. That's really great. But anyway, so how do we get off on that sidebar? I don't know.
Because
But
we both have ADHD.
I know.
Again.
I, oh my God. But anyway, so let's talk a little bit about, talking about the nonprofit business model and obviously funding solutions, because like you said, you created a nonprofit organization when you started the Rose Project. Tell us a little bit about some of the things that you went through, and some of the things that are available, different funding models, government grants and public-private partnerships and all that good stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, first of all, for anyone that is either wanting to launch a nonprofit or in the middle of doing it, especially in the real estate industry, you first need to incorporate as a 501(c)(3. You can do that. Go for it because that way you do have the actual advantages of being a nonprofit. It takes a little bit of time, and that doesn't mean that you can't work on your nonprofit until then. I actually was on the board of a nonprofit before the official 501(c)(3 kicked in, and we were on the board for months doing meetings, planning all these things, even though their 501(c)(3 wasn't approved yet. So you don't need to wait to start, but before you accept any funding or do any transactions, it's imperative that that 501(c)(3 is active. So that's just the early stages. But as a nonprofit, the biggest things that I would recommend that they focus all their time and energy on to raise money is going to be your marketing. Like that you could have the best mission in the world, but if you can't communicate that message effectively to the people that you want money from. So think about that. A lot of times the people with money, they didn't necessarily get there because they love nonprofit or because they have that mindset or that servant heart. A lot of times they are analytical, that they have the mindset of, okay, if I do X, it'll yield Y, and then I can pay for Z. Like these guys are just number people. So a lot of the marketing I do when I'm pitching to investors or real estate developers looks so different from the marketing I would do if I was marketing one of my other companies or working with like an influencer or a brand or something. You know, like it's very different. So with that being said, if you don't know how to communicate your message effectively yourself, I would recommend that you do a lot of research and try to work with someone that can do it for you. But you have to be very careful because the reason I have a marketing company is because I've seen too many good people and good businesses get hurt over marketing scams or agencies that are so expensive and they don't give you the ROI to continue to pay them. Like, so I've seen it from both angles. So to get actual funding for these projects, if you don't want to work with an investor and you want to strictly go like the government route, or getting like different grants and stuff, you can absolutely do that. So there's several different avenues you can go. For our company, we primarily focus on working with investors, but depending on the market we're in, we'll also apply for like affordable housing grants because those vary by jurisdiction. And that's the great thing about building, at least in the US, is because you can apply for grants from not just the federal level, but also in your own backyard of where you'll be building. So a lot of times, counties and municipalities, they really want projects like this because think about it, like every single piece of this equation in building housing for nonprofit, it's business, every single piece of it. Like even the town you're building in, that town runs like a business. Like they want to approve projects and put money into projects that is going to make their town more desirable from not just I want to live there standpoint, let me buy this house, but also for companies. Like every single town that you know of, when they're looking at their budget and what how much money they can spend on, you know, snow removal and gardening, all these things to make their town pretty, they also have to review where they're going to put their grant money. People are always applying for grants for their projects. So you have to go fight for money from the government. But the good news with that is if you can communicate effectively and you have a good plan and your marketing's good, it makes sense, it's quick to understand, there's a really, really good chance you will win that bid every time if you're building with a container because it is new and flashy and cool. So it steals all the attention every time. You will always be the new kid on the block when you're talking about container homes. But number two, it is green. It is environmentally friendly. It is energy efficient. It is all good press. That is all good PR because they are such favorable topics today that everybody likes and wants, and it's in the media. Like whenever they can align with that, that makes them happy too. So the grants that you can apply for from a federal level and state level, it's like There's something called CDFIs, which stands for Community Development Financial Institutions, and those like they're everywhere. So those vary all over the country as well. But like people are becoming certified CDFIs all the time. And what that means is they can access federal grants, they can access, investments to fund affordable housing projects. So them being certified, it just enables them to attract more investors, and they'll support small businesses and enhance communities with that. So being able to look for anyone who is a certified CDFI, public-private partnerships, those are like when you collaborate with local governments or like private entities that will provide financial backing and resources of that nature. So that's essentially like a lot of times if we're working with a bank ourselves because I can't get an investor for a project, or if we just want to do self-fund, we will go to a banking partner, which sometimes is private equity, or if you're working with a private, bank that is, looking at your project and they're like, okay, like we want to be aligned with this type of publicity, if that makes sense. Because even them, you would think that, oh, well, a traditional bank, like if you talk about Chase, for example, they are, in my experience, that's who I bank with, but they tend to be very, very reserved and conservative because they're so big. They can be like, they can be very picky on who they work with.
Sure.
And so they don't tend to give like risky loans to projects like this. But when you're working with private money lending, a private lender can be an individual who's like, yeah, just, I want to put money into this project and you're going to pay me. Or a private lender can be a group of investors or just an entire fund. So there's masterminds, like one is called Fund Launch, where they specialize in creating funds for initiatives, for companies, for investments, like investment funds and things like that. So that would be an example of still working privately because it's not government related. And anyways, like with all the different options, you can either go public, which is government grants, like federal, working in your county to get different grant credits. And a lot of the time when you're building with container homes, the credits you're eligible for are going to be credits for being environmental. So repurposing materials when you build with a container, like that's a recycling almost. And also like saving on not cutting down trees and using as much lumber, like all of those things will make you eligible for, almost think of it like a tax refund, but you'll get a grant or aid towards your project. And so whenever you build these communities and they're not government regulated or government run, you have lots of options for how to actually fund them, which are good. So like options as in, like I described earlier, you can have businesses that sponsor the containers or the units because they want to get their marketing in there. So every person that moves in or comes in, they get like a big welcome book with all of these offers, or they get all of these like things that are already set up in the apartment that are from those sponsors. So it's just permanent marketing that you get access to. They can fund it that way. But a lot of times I'll see like private funds be put together. So developers might go in on deals together and spread it across all of their investors. Typically something like this, I would recommend like marketing the heck out of it. So having a big PR campaign and blitz, that'll help drive more attention and more, investments that way too from government grants. And then also tax exempt bonds. So like if you are a nonprofit and you've already been established as a 501c3, you could be eligible for a tax exempt bond, which people would just use to finance like a housing project. And they're very attractive because they have lower interest rates for for longer time periods. So whenever you're doing a big development, like we were pitching a resort recently, and that is a project that made me nervous because I'm like, there are so many things that will delay this project. I don't even know where to start. So when you have the ability to make a very long repayment period and the interest is as low as you can get it, that only happens with nonprofit. So a lot of times they'll give you breaks that way. And those are just better for large scale developments. They typically won't allow it for like a single build. But yeah, I feel like, especially with veterans, the reason I love this mission so much is not only for the actual individuals it's serving, but veterans, the things that they do have access to today, like they do have access to grants, and they do have certain credits they already get from the government. They are able to leverage that themselves and make the development even cheaper. So that's an option for veterans that are homeless, but they do have the ability to buy, as in like they're still getting paid from serving, they still have a stipend with the government. Like any veteran like that, there's also the option that they fund their own development within the community. So you can get them access to much lower rates and a mortgage and lower financing, and have these that are sold. Or you can build a nonprofit community where they're rented. And when they're rented out, and you have it managed by a property management company, that maybe it's you or maybe you hire one, but that's another source of revenue that people want to get behind. Because if you're renting these out, those veterans will have to pay their rent. That's an option to fund it, unless you want it to be completely nonprofit to where it's free for them. Then it's just a longer term play where we had developments like that where they wanted it to be free or very, very reduced. And so they ended up having options to where the residents would work. They would earn their keep and live there by managing it personally. So that was when I told you about working with like drug addicts and their families, like that nonprofit was saying that's how they were planning on funding it, is we want to make it free, but we'll just make sure that everyone that lives there will like chip in and work. And they are getting grants from the government for being on aid. So like that grant was just going to the funding project. So they were happy because they were getting checks every month.
Well, they'll make, and that also creates, while they're actually participating in basically taking care of the property, they have some type of ownership of where they're living. It's not in
Yeah.
the chances of them trashing it are less.
Oh, absolutely. And I wouldn't even have that concern with veterans or even like with the drug addicts, like this nonprofit. You're right. The concern for them was government run organizations had very high incidence of relapse and also crime. Like people would be robbed, murdered. Like there were just a lot of things that this nonprofit was sharing with us and that they experienced. And so with that being said, having solutions on how to counter that. And it's funny, like when we talk about veterans, we talk about like victims of domestic violence, or we talk about anyone struggling with substance abuse. All of those different groups, all of those personality types, a lot of them will suffer from core things that are similar. It might be PTSD, it might be trauma, it might be mental illness. All of these things overlap, and which the solution ends up being very common and simple. As in, once these projects are funded by any combination of ways, like we literally have at least 5 that you can go right away, but once it's funded, the things that you can do within that community are endless, because you now have a niche community where it's only veterans. So that means you can have things on there like equine therapy, which is horses. And so when we were working with the substance abuse nonprofit, they were saying like, okay, well, we want to make this like a much better situation for these families and these people struggling with this illness. So what can we put on site to where it makes sense and everyone's making money? And I was like, well, that's easy. What if you partner with like an adjacent farm, something that's revenue producing, and you have veterans there that have cleared background checks, that have cleared mental health assessments, what have you, and they start part of their rehabilitation into civilian life by doing things like working on a ranch or volunteering, or things that are really good for their soul that we've seen studies on. And like, this is how we help people with PTSD. You do things like equine therapy, you do things like group therapy, you write, you paint, like all of these different tools that you can have available by, having that community center like you and I spoke about that can serve as like a multi-purpose facility that can generate revenue as well. So whenever you have something that is that size and a group like veterans, that's another very marketable group because, and I hate to say it like that, but I really feel like I'm a translator most days where I see our goal. We want to help and serve homeless veterans, but I also see what's going to prevent us from doing that. And a lot of it is going to be people wanting to invest in it because they want to know what's in it for them. So with all of that being said, I just feel like if you set it up in the way that you're thinking, how is everyone going to win? How is everyone going to be happy? And money has to be made to cover things. What's the best way to get that? And so for me, that's how I really like to think when I'm mapping out strategy, is because I know what investors want and I know what our project wants. What's the best way to communicate that message to get a win? And so it's usually if you can come across the right way the first time, that is usually all it takes to at least get them in play and continue on to the end, just to get your message clear the first pitch.
That's right, because first impressions are so important, especially when you go pitch to investors and everything else. But you guys, there's so much that we covered today, and Lord knows there's so much more. We could go on for hours and hours.
Yeah.
But tell our listeners how they could contact you if they are interested in. And again, the one thing that I wanted to stress that I've always stressed about even all the radio and TV work that I've done here in the Valley since 2005 is the fact that you need to ask questions to qualified people, whatever it is, whether it's your home, different parts of your home. If you want to get started and become active in the community and do some of the things that Chloe and I have spoken about, you need to call and ask the questions and speak to the people that know, who have been there already, to guide you along the road. So not that you go off the rail somewhere and then you just give up on everything, because if you have a mission and you're passionate about what you're doing, you need to make sure that you get to the right people to get the right information. How could they contact you, Chloe?
Yeah, great question, Steve. Thanks for asking. So for anyone that is interested in container homes, please feel free to visit our website. It's just www.boxedluxehomes.com. And that's Luxe, Luxe, homes is plural.com. And on our website, we actually have a contact section where if you're an investor, if you are a future home buyer, or if you are someone that's interested in the Rose Project and being part of the nonprofit, you can simply just shoot us a message. So if you can just go to our contact form and tell us what you're interested in, someone will be in touch.
That's right. And if you could always contact me at the show at our 1-800 number, it's 1-833-BOXCAR, and we will get you the information that you need, and I will get you connected with Chloe. So this way we can get you the information that you need to be able to, maybe you just want to learn more, and maybe there's some more, and Lord knows there's more detail that we could not cover in 1 hour. that you need to know. Exactly. But that's always, but Chloe, that's always good, because that always makes for a good, second show.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I hope that helped. Thanks again for having me.
Oh, I really appreciate you being on the show, and we will make sure we get the word out. And I want to thank all our listeners for listening to Boxcar Universe. Remember, we always try and give you the cutting edge information on container homes, what containers are being used for, and also the effect that using container homes has on our society, which is so very important as we go forward and it become more technologically advanced. And some of the things that you can put in container homes are just as cool as you could put in a traditional home. So, but we want to tell all our listeners, if you are interested in getting a container home or a container pool, make sure you reach out to me at the show, Steve at boxcaruniverse.com. And remember, Boxcar Universe can be heard weekly on any podcast player. And always remember, let us remodel and renovate your world. We'll see you on the next edition of Boxcar Universe. Have a great week.